Excellent. Okay, let's get this agenda back up here. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our first training committee meeting of 2022. I believe that you all have gotten a copy of this agenda. If not, it was attached to the meeting minutes, but obviously we're going to be displaying it here. So please, if you have questions, you are all muted. You can certainly put them in chat or take the opportunity to raise your hand, and I will certainly try to give you the floor if you have any questions. But to open this up, I'm going to ask Deputy Commissioner Director Robert Macarone if you would please do some welcome and introductory remarks.
Surely. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Patty. I just want to welcome everyone to the first statewide training committee in 2022. That really sounds unbelievable when you say it. 2022, here we are. And Patty, do you remember a conversation we had when we were talking about struggling to try to get people involved in the statewide training committee meeting? You know, we had a small group of 7 or 9 people who were regulars, and today we have 53 people signed on, I see. So,
yes.
Wow, training has taken off. Let me say that we're so excited that you've been able to join us. We have a full agenda, so I'm going to be very brief. I want to wish you well. I want to recognize the leadership of probation directors out there and the hard work of probation supervisors, officers, and staff that comprise our 58 probation departments. You have done outstanding work, always, but most particularly during these past 2 years. And it's good to see everyone here safe and sound. We're beginning to see that the COVID pandemic is leaving. We couldn't be happier in ushering it out of our lives. Please stay the course, be careful, take every precaution and protect you, your family members, and your staff. But it is good to see you today and know that, in fact, we are making progress and working our way through this. We have many exciting things to discuss, so I'll conclude my comments there. Welcome, everyone. Thank you, Patty.
Sure, thank you. So the second agenda item is to review and approve our meeting minutes from the November 22nd meeting. I don't know if you've even had a chance to review them. The link is there, but if there's any reason why we have to visit those, if you can make that known now before we move on. Okay, I see nothing coming in, so I will move on to item number 3, which is the Albany FPP report. So we do have some dates here, folks, for our next virtual fundamentals. This will officially go out in a training announcement and application probably the first week in March. I'd love to be able to get it out by March 1, but I'll tell you why it may wait a little bit after that. And it's because we are going to be meeting with the Municipal Police Training Council actually on March 9th. Originally that date was the 2nd. We've now learned that it's March 9th, and I know that that's cutting it a little close to an April 4th start date, but I do want to have the benefit of knowing what the council is going to report to us, and we'll talk about that item in just a moment. So the dates here are firm in our minds. Just know that that announcement will go out in the first week of March. So the class dates are April 4 to the 8th. The 11th to the 15th. We'll take a week off because it is spring break for most of the kids, including my own. And so the week of the 25th to 29th, and we'll conclude May 2nd to 6th. So it'll be the 4 weeks, and it will be virtual. And again, that will be announced in the beginning part of March. Okay. So I'll move to the local report out, and then I think item number 5 may take us some time as Bob and I kind of help you navigate what exactly is going on with the Bcpo, what is our current plan. We'll talk about the MPTC meeting, and then we'll share some ideas about what we think the fundamentals curriculum might become, what that's going to look like. And then the last item you see under 5 is the Academy Directors Forum. But before we get to that, I do want to hear from the local academies and give you a chance to report out on your status. So who do I have? Let me see, Suffolk County. I did set this so you could unmute yourself. So if I have the Suffolk County rep on.
Yeah, I'm here, Patty. How you doing?
Great, thanks. Good, I'm doing great. So go ahead and give us your report.
Okay, sorry. My name is Kimberly Yoder. I'm the course director for Suffolk County. We have made some strides. We have new staff instructors, and we have people who are looking to become staff instructors. And those folks are trying to become trained in both motivational interviewing and the crisis intervention for law enforcement, the two new or newer modules that will become necessary for us to move forward. Actually, I'm very happy to see that the new fundamentals class will be given, and our instructors have been asking about when this is going to come up so that they can sign up for it. So we are all looking forward to get more of our instructors to be fundamentals ready and anchor instructors. So that is where we are. We have one other thing, actually. We are trying to get with some local master instructors to locally give an IDC course that will assist both us and some of the smaller municipalities, such as the towns, maybe the SPCA and such, so that we can build up and hopefully get some master instructors on our staff, and we will not be as reliant upon the police academy because they have so many staff themselves who want to become master instructors. So we're trying to become more self-sufficient in that manner. So that is about it. We're moving forward and happily so.
Great, Kim. Thank you. So I believe that your plan in Suffolk County is not only to have the Fundamentals Academy, but also to run the basic course for peace officers in-house. And to that end, you are trying to get your officers all the training credentials that they will need in order to do those things. So I think that's a great plan. And I don't think that you have a scheduled date for any academy at this point, correct?
That is correct. We do not have a scheduled date. We've been approved, it appears, for 20 new officers, but we don't have a date scheduled yet. Obviously, the list came out, and so we have not begun the screening process yet. We wanted to be, I believe, a little bit more solid as to where we were with the academy before we started the screening process. So I would imagine sometime in the spring that will start, with hopefully an understanding that late fall, early winter of 22, 23, we would hopefully have a class that would be able to teach both all of the modules, Bcpo, fundamentals, just everything. And I will say that we've learned that the active shooters course we're qualified for at this point. We don't need to get more training for this module. So we're really down to, as I said, the MI, the critical incident, and update on the fundamentals, with hopefully getting some more people in for anchor training, and we'll be ready to go.
Okay. Okay, great, Kim. Thank you so much for that report.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Nassau County, I think Carrie Shannon is on with us. Carrie, can you go ahead and unmute?
Hi, Patty. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thanks. We just finished our last class of 13 in the end of January. We had to take a little break because of COVID. They have to still do firearms and DT and OC, and then we'll be finishing that up in the spring. We do think we'll be able to hire again sometime in the fall. but we don't
Okay,
have any dates or anything yet. They still have to get the list and interview and get civil service approval and everything like that.
Sure. And refresh my memory, Carrie, are you also intending to do the Bcpo course in addition to fundamentals?
I think we're going to try.
Yes.
We do need like
that.
the critical
the crisis
intervention training. I'm not sure if we need anything else at this point.
All right. And once everybody has a chance to report out, I'll give you a little more information on some of those special credentials. Was that it, Carrie? Okay. All right. So New York City, Kim Irby, are you with us?
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone.
Hello.
Hello. Okay.
Hello.
New York City, we are pressing along pretty vigorously, I would say. So we finished a class that commenced on November 29th of 2021, and we successfully completed that academy on January 21st of 2022, and they are up and running. And we then started a new class on January 24th of 2022, and they are scheduled to complete on March 18th of 2022. And so we started out with 32. We're down a few, but it is still a full class. And we are actually in week 4 of the fundamentals curriculum. We are slated and hoping to get approval for an additional class in May of this year as well. And so that paperwork is in, and we're just pending approval for that. As far as the new curriculum, we are working. I mean, thank you guys. You guys are really sending the things out that we need. You know, I'm always going to advocate for some more things closer to downstate, but we're getting there because at least there's things in Westchester. So the use of force refresher is coming up, and fortunately we had 2 acceptances for that as far as our instructors, and we're pending the next DT class. And also, unfortunately, the active shooter, which is one that we need, but that was full. So we hope that the next one will be closer and we'll be able to get in. Hint, 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 hint. Also, so I'm looking forward to hearing more information about the new Bcpo. I think that we're looking and we have it under consideration, but I just want to have much more clarity in all of the particulars and how this would actually roll out and what it would look like in regards to our academy as it currently exists. So I'm looking forward to hearing some information about that today.
Great. Thank you, Kim, for that report. I promise you I'm going to share some information. How about Westchester? Do I have Daniela or another representative? Okay. I see you on there, Daniela, but I'm not hearing you. We may have to come back to you, my dear. You are definitely unmuted, but we weren't hearing your audio. So if we can go to Monroe.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, never mind. There she is.
Okay.
I got you.
There's more than one way to skin a cat, so I just figured I would dial in really quick. Hi, Patty. How are you? Hello to everyone. We have 2 IDC courses coming up that we're hosting in March and April already with a full class because we've had so many retirements. We've had some people who are just not interested in instructing anymore. So we're doing that, and then that'll set us up we're hiring hopefully 11 probation officer trainees, and so we're holding an academy in June with the basic course of peace officer through fundamentals. So that's June, July, and August will be a tight group. And we've got Rockland, Putnam, and Putnam was a maybe, but Rockland, Putnam, and Orange joining us.
So you're going to run the Bcpo as well as FPP?
Yes, I have instructors for all pieces, and I have two. Well, 2 firearms instructors are going next week to the alert training.
Okay, so I'll loop back
next.
around. I'll loop back around to that, Daniela.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay,
I appreciate that.
My pleasure.
Well, as usual, Westchester is right up on speed here. Okay, and Monroe County. Hello, Monroe.
Good afternoon. My name is Danielle Arena. I'm taking over for Kelly Wilkin. I know she's done this for several years. So I just got into this role. Thank you. I'm going to report the information I have, but I don't have all the details.
That's
as far as instructors, we have 50 plus general topic instructors, DT instructors, ASR instructors, and we also have those who have attended the basic course for police officer training for trainers on ethics and professionalism, as well as fundamentals of crisis intervention. We don't plan to hold a fundamentals course until this fall, as we're hiring around 8 to 10 officers this coming spring, most likely. We anticipate inviting other counties, but that hasn't obviously been discussed with management as of yet, depending on our numbers and COVID protocols of that nature. That is, we intend to include the new Bcpo criteria as well in our fundamentals this fall. But I'm just digging into that, so.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot, but Daniela, welcome. So Daniela is the new SCO in Monroe County. In case you didn't catch that, Kelly Wilkin has moved on to another position. So you've got some big shoes to fill, but it sounds like you're already kind of up to speed. So we appreciate the report.
Thank you.
And last but not least, I saw Glenn. I saw your name on the list for Erie or Aaron.
Afternoon, Patty.
Hi, Glenn.
I am here with Aaron.
Hi, Patty. Hi, Aaron.
We are planning for a fundamentals, whatever that looks like, class in the fall. We don't have plans before September, October would be our start date. So, you know, we're trying to right now to get our instructor staff organized and kind of pigeonholed into topic areas and trying to get the certifications we need for those instructors in those specialty areas. I think we're pretty well set with the exception of the crisis intervention specialty. You know, I did contact, I think her name is Raina from mental health.
Renee. Yep, Renee.
That both of the Schenectady class and the other location were full, so we're waiting on the next round of dates, I guess, for that.
Okay.
But other than that, we're you know, trickling in with the hires, and you know, with the surrounding counties that we service, we should be able to fill up a class by the fall, I think.
All right, fantastic, Glenn. Thank you, and thank you, Aaron. So let me just make a couple of kind of broad comments, and then I know, Bob, you're also waiting to be able to speak on the Bcpo, so I'll give you the floor in a moment. But what we're trying to do, and I sent out an email to you all yesterday, at least to the local directors, to just kind of ask you to start taking a little bit of an accounting of what you need in terms of your certification. You obviously did that because you just reported it. And so let me say this, we're working with our Office of Public Safety, who are sending out the announcements that you're referencing, the crisis intervention and the active shooter, so on and so forth. So you have the curriculum, you have the table of contents, you're now able to identify the gaps that you have, if you will, in your training needs. And OPS is willing to take that information from us and try to be sure that you get all of the certifications you need to make sure you can run your Bcpo's academies, which is why I've been, you know, asking you to make sure that if you're a site that's going to do that, I want to prioritize you to get those seats. So the first order of business is, please know that we will do everything in our power to make sure that whatever your training needs are in those areas, we will get those to you. Okay, so we'll work hand in hand. You just need to identify who needs to be in what training, so that I can forward that information. So that's number one. And a couple of you have mentioned active shooter. I just want to clarify this, and it was confusing to me at first too. But in the curriculum for the peace officers, the Bcpo is an acronym that is used to refer to the basic course for police and the basic course for peace. A little confusing. The version for the peace officers, there's it's a fewer number of hours in the active shooter, and the credential is simply that you have instructor development certification. So Kim Irby, you don't need to have anybody attend any special class on active shooter unless you wish to give them kind of more enriched background as an instructor. But in terms of required certification, they do not need anything above IDC. So if anybody else was wondering that too, and again, feel free to unmute, throw something in the chat if you have a question about that. And, you know, it's not that you can't go in. I will certainly facilitate if that's what you want to do to get in there, but you don't need to have that. Any questions about that? Okay, so I'm going to turn this over and kind of ask Bob to join me here as we talk a little bit about the Bcpo. And I know that we've been sharing information with you. You have a general sense kind of what's going on here, but just to refresh memories, the Municipal Police Training Council has ruled that all peace officers, including probation officers, will need to come into compliance with the Bcpo course, which is now 162 hours. The date for that effective requirement is still a little up in the air, and that's what the March MPTC meeting is going to be about. You know, we intend to go in and ask for additional time. In fact, originally we were thinking of maybe later this year, but Bob and I have been talking, and we're actually going to ask for January 1, 2023. So our hope is, if that is granted, we will be able to continue to plan and get prepared for this. The current FPP curriculum would still be recognized for training through 2022. But once that effective date comes into play, all peace officers hired after that effective date will need to be trained in the Bcpo. And this is where, Bob, I'm going to ask you to talk to the folks here a little bit about what you and I had spoken about not necessarily waiting until that effective date.
That was my cue. So thank you, Patty.
Sure.
We decided at OPCA we're going to write a book on the COVID-19 pandemic, and the first chapter is going to be entitled "You're on Mute." So anyhow, it's good to see you all again. And I want to talk about specifically, and I'll try to be succinct, but there's a lot to discuss here. I did have the opportunity to share some of this preliminarily with probation directors throughout the state last week, their monthly meeting, working closely with Lucy Taylor Welch, their president, and vice president Joanne Miller. And I know we've been having ongoing conversations with the training director for COPA, and that's Dutchess County Director Mary Ellen Still. And I see Mary Ellen is faithfully on this call, as she always has been. Really the overseer of all things training, and what an exciting place to be, because that's how change occurs, through training. So I want to talk about 3 or 4 of the different things. First is logistics. The effective date by law is actually January 1st, 2022. So we passed that date, right? That's what the law says. Every peace officer hired on or after January 21st in the state of New York whether you're a probation officer, a parole officer, or a harbor master driving that ferry from Staten Island to Lower Manhattan each day, you must be certified as a peace officer. And as such, you are required to take the basic course for peace officers, which is now 162 hours. That created a bit of a problem for us because we were left a little bit on short notice. Back in 2005, and I hate to go back in history, but history is important sometimes. And in this particular respect, Kathy Pilata, our then director of training, and boy, we had some great directors of training, right? Kathy Pilata, Patty Donahue, Patty Clements, had some great directors of training statewide. She and I went in with the new fundamentals of probation practice and the 4-inch binder, probably 2 4-inch binders that we provided to the MPTC, and we gave it to them a week before. And when I went in to present on it, they said, Mr. Macaron, this is incredible. This is an incredible piece of work, this evidence-based training that you're doing. We read it. We congratulate you in the probation discipline. This exceeds our basic course for peace officers. Well, we feel pretty good about that. In fact, we went on to get it credentialed and certified by the American Probation Parole Association, and one step further, I believe, by the ICCA, the International Association of Community Correction Agencies. So the fundamentals of curriculum has served us well. We updated it a couple of years ago to add the 1 week of specialized probation training to accommodate and help probation officers advance their own knowledge with respect to youth and raise the age legislation. And we thought we were in pretty good shape. And then we learned in the fall that what had been occurring is that there had been this creeping up and additional hours added to the fundamentals. Largely responsible were the 40 hours for defensive tactics and the 21 hours. So if you look at that, you combine the 40 hours and the 21 hours for crisis intervention training, there's the extra 60 hours essentially, right? So it kind of took Patty and I by surprise that this was going to go into effect January 1st. And we were told, just refer them to the zone commanders and they know what they've got to do out there and it'll take care of itself. Well, Patty and I don't feel that way. We work very closely. As you know, OPCA has a unique relationship with our probation directors, our probation officers across the state. And we just don't, advise you in writing that there's a new process to follow and you got to go follow that. We're here to help you. We're here to support you. And we advised the Office of Public Safety that in fact, it was going to take more time because this isn't a single agency. This is 58 probation departments in the great city of New York. This is a large undertaking. Each one of those departments has its own human resources or personnel division that advertises for these positions. So time is required in order for us to get this in order. So we decided that we would go to the March 9th. We recently learned March 9th meeting of the Municipal Police Training Council. And Patty and I are going to go to them and present a plan whereby we're asking for this deferment that we've received over the last couple of years while they went ahead and expanded their training requirements to actually be deferred to January 1st, 2023. That will mean that every new probation officer, every new probation officer hired on or after January 1st, 2023 will absolutely be required to complete the basic course for peace officers, 162 hours as it exists today. In addition, of course, we are going to require probation officers to complete what is in essence, we think, 3 hours for fundamentals of probation practice. Because let's face it, you can complete the basic course for peace officers and you won't know a thing about probation. So you're really required two trainings there. Now, the MPTC could grant us that, and we're hoping they do. But they could also say, you know what, we want this in place September 1st. We want this in place June 1st. I'm hoping they don't do that. And to try to feather our position in support of a January 1st, 2023 deadline, what we're going to tell the MPTC is that effective with the MPTC meeting thereafter, we hope that we're going to be working with each of the local academies, and we want those academies to try to get their officers trained, their new probation officers trained in the basic course for peace officers, wherever possible. Why do we think that is important? Two reasons, and I'll be very honest about this. One is I think it'll advance our position for the 2023 for everybody. If in fact we're making the effort, we may fall short. But the second reason we're doing that is because when we look at the availability of basic course for peace officers, and Patty and I have spoken with every zone commander out there, and all 16 or 18 sites have responded to Patty's survey, they're not all that frequent. Right now, Westchester runs a basic course for peace officers once a year. It's usually during the summer months. They're training summer security, auxiliary police. Can they accommodate a small number of probation officers? Of course they can. However, and I'm just using Westchester as an example, if Westchester were to hire 12 or 15 and the class is full, then they've got to go to the county executive to say, we really need to conduct a second basic course for peace officers. Right now, if Westchester hires an individual this summer, they'd have to wait an entire 12 months to get that training, most likely. So our rule says within 6 months, and that's important. There's a great deal of thought that went into our regulations, and I suspect the reason that we brought it down from 6 months to a year for the basic course for peace officers is that with police, they're in training not for 162 hours or the now 9 weeks for a probation officer. They're in training for over 600 hours. And in New York City, they're in training for 900 plus hours. And then they do a buddy routine or mentorship in the community. They don't just arm train a police officer and send them into New York City. That would be crazy. And so they're not so concerned about that year because the person really is in training. They're not exercising all the powers of a peace officer. But that's not true of probation officers. The truth is, probation officers, once they're trained, they're going into homes, they're doing searches. That's an invasive type of activity. They have the power under certain conditions to use deadly physical force when properly trained. So these are pretty awesome responsibilities, and consequently our rule reads within 6 months. Going back to my original point, you will want to ensure that people are readily trained in the basic course for peace officers. So probation directors and departments and staff development officers are going to have to necessarily work closely with your local training academies. Some academies, and I've heard, and I'm very excited to hear, that some of our academies are going to do the basic course for peace officers. That's great. That's wholly contained within the department. And if you can do that, and also invite neighboring counties, as you normally do, to complete that, so much the better, right? So much the better. So what we're going to ask departments as you go forward is keep that in mind, because you don't want to hire somebody and wait a year until they, the basic course for peace officer becomes available. So wherever possible, we're going to tell them departments are going to try to reach out and get those officers to training now. Because if we just made this effective and we said January 1st we'll comply, we'd never get there. You won't be in compliance until the end of 2023 by the time you arrange a course. Now, to assist you, Patty has developed this very unique mapping program, and I know she's going to talk about that later, but it's there with all the contact information available to you. Let me go back to the MPTC. The other reason that we're asking a little forbearance and understanding here is that through our work with the local training zone commanders, we learn the following. In some counties, there is no charge to train a probation officer, a peace officer. In Westchester, it's free. However, in the North Country, it's about $2,200 for a peace officer and about $2,500 for a police officer. And then down in New York City, not within the department itself, but within New York City, the training academy there, Demetrius tells us it's about $1,300 to train a probation officer. So it's different. New York State is a large state. It's going to take our departments a little bit of time to get to accommodate this diversity of different training methods, training costs. And so we want to comply with the law. I'm going to say in a moment why I think complying with the law is so important here, why this requirement is so important. But it's different. The state is diversified. So this is what we're going to tell the MPTC. This is going to have an impact on probation departments and their budgets, clearly. You'll want to share with your personnel directors the fact that, the future candidate for a probation position is going to require training in the Bcpo. To that effect, I specifically asked Demetrius, our friend down in New York City, what about the defensive tactics course? Is there anything special that's required in physical or agility? Is this similar to a fire person, a fire professional with a tank of oxygen on their back running up, 30 flights? Is that the type of physical agility testing? And to my satisfaction, I should say, I was pleased. He said, no, it is not. Basically, 99 and 9/10% of individuals, if in their relatively good health, will have no problem completing the defensive tactics course. So there's not that physical challenge. But nevertheless, I think, I can't speak for the personnel directors across the state. They may want to include that in the announcement that all new peace officers will be required to complete 162-hour basic course for peace officers, as well as, the full fundamentals of probation practice. So that's something that you'll want to work with your human resource officers. Why is this important? I talked about logistics. I want to talk about the discipline. It's important for a couple of reasons. And the truth is, we have heard, frankly, nothing but support on this issue. Patty and I were wondering what the reaction would be, but most professionals across the state have said to us, Bob, when you look at the powers of a probation officer, in 36 of the departments, they're authorized to carry firearms. Of course, they're trained in firearms. But when you look at the complexity of their task, the knowledge they must have, the family court, the criminal court, executing warrants, doing searches, when you look at all those tasks and the potential dangers as well as the knowledge base that is required, we too understand that there's a need for additional training. It doesn't surprise us that it has come time to add to the training required of probation officers. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think it is required. I think it'll go a long way toward adding credentials and professionalism to our discipline in the long run. I think it might even raise the statute of probation officers and result in perhaps financial gain with respect to salary structure, because we're getting to be more like police officers in terms of what is required for training. I would argue that some of our training, particularly in the fundamentals, is even more sophisticated. It's a whole new science and evidence-based practice. So I think that the credential is important when we look at the authority granted probation officers, when we look at the complexity of their task. In the long run, this will serve the probation community well. Lastly, I want to talk about content. Content is important. We spoke about logistics. We talked about the discipline. I want to speak a little bit about content because I read the 162 hours of content and I outlined it. And I came to the conclusion that most of it, I would say 95 or 97% of it, is very, very good. I'm pleased that we have more hours dedicated to constitutional law, search and seizure, the Fourth Amendment, the right to due process. All of these things are important because probation officers make arrests, right? Probation officers execute warrants. There's a great liability in addition to the potential for physical harm that can be realized through these activities. So I like that. I like the full day of ethics. We do a pretty good job on our ethics training, but I like the full day. I think there's more to be gained there. However, there are a few drawbacks, and that's the 1 or 2%. I note that there's 7 hours dedicated to conducting a homicide investigation and interviewing witnesses. We don't do that. I note that on the ethics, there's 5 different hypotheticals, and they all are written for probation police officers and off-duty plainclothes police officers. Well, we're certainly involved and certainly interested in ethics, but we're not police officers. So what I said to the Office of Public Safety is, we're going to comply with the law because it is the law, and we don't get to choose the laws that we follow. That's what the rule of law means in New York State, what the rule of law means in this country, and we recognize its value. But boy, we got to have a little conversation with you about content going forward, because we've got a total of 2,500 peace officers across the state who perform extremely important functions out there, not to mention parole officers. And we want that curriculum to reflect their jobs. So for the short term, we will complete the basic course for peace officers as is. In the longer term, we suggested to the Office of Public Safety that they establish a peace officer advisory group, and that probation is represented on that advisory group. And we help you refine that curriculum so it becomes even more meaningful to probation officers. This is what I see. So they're doing the training in Westchester, and they've got 45 peace officers and 15 probation officers. And the instructor says, I want all of the non-probation officers, peace officers, to do the scenarios 1 through 3, 1 to 2, and I want the probation officers to do the ethics scenarios 3, 4, and 5 because they pertain more to your job. And when we report out, you'll report those out. I want to look at the homicide investigation hours, the content there, and talk about maybe we retool that to how to do verification around a PSI and spend more time on that activity. So this is a work in progress. We will rely on the statewide training committee and the probation directors to help guide us in the development and ensure that the future basic course for peace officers is spot on in terms of what we need. We're not taking that for granted. So that essentially concludes my comments, and I'd be open to answering any questions. But first, Patty, did I miss anything? I tried to be pretty comprehensive, you know me.
Thank you, Bob. So I don't really think you missed anything, but I'm sure that there will be some discussion here. I'm hoping there'll be some discussion, some questions. So I'm gonna ask that if you do have questions, I'm trying my best here to monitor. There's a good crowd here, but please, you can unmute, you can put something in chat. I want to make sure that everyone is really kind of clear on what is going to happen with the Bcpo, on what our plan is, what our strategy is. I don't want anyone feeling like, they're not informed. So this is an opportunity for us to kind of communicate on this. Any questions at all?
Patty, this is Kim from Suffolk. How you doing?
Good.
I had a question regarding the ethics and some of those other things that were not mentioned. Are those going to be like the crisis intervention, critical incident, and the motivational interviewing, where there's a special certification for those officers, for instructors to teach that, or is it going to be more along the lines of the active shooter, where a general topics instructor may teach? And actually, the second part of that question is this: if we get people who are complete the train the trainer on the crisis intervention, critical incident for law enforcement, and motivational interviewing, is it acceptable that they teach that without having had gone through IDC yet, because we are working, and I want to say thank you to Westchester for inviting us and giving us 2 billets at their IDC for our officers, but we do need to train more officers. But we have a bunch of people who are training up for the motivational interviewing. I think that's
okay.
it.
So let me try to handle those one at a time. And give me a second here. I'm going to stop sharing the agenda for a moment, and I'm going to share the table of contents because I think it'll be helpful for everyone to see this. All right, so hopefully you're able to see what I just pulled up. What this is the table of contents for the BCPO course effective January 1 of this year. And you'll note as you kind of walk across here, this is the number of hours, the topic area, and over on the far right, you see the instructor prerequisites. If it says GT, that just means that your general topics IDC certification is all that you need to teach that section. So ethics is not one that requires a special certification. There is, however, we all know the use of force. We've kind of gotten that one out of the way, if you will, because we've been doing that in our current FPP. Here are the crisis intervention. Here's the defensive tactics. Here's the ASR. You notice that general topics is just for active shooter, right? And then as you scroll down, the rest of these are all general topics. So this document, I just saw a comment come through in the chat. This document has been shared out with all of the local academies. It actually was edited just recently by the Office of Public Safety, and I wanted to make sure that we had the exact version before I sent it out for everyone. But our intent is to share the information about what the BCPO course is going to look like first. So you'll get this, and there'll be a link for you to be able to view curriculum. We also intend to share the map that Bob had mentioned. So the map that I've created is still in draft form, but what we've done is through the conversations with the zone commanders and also with the local academy directors who are in this meeting right now, for those who are planning to offer the BCPO and are able to extend that invitation out to others, and not every county will be able to do that. I understand that. But if that's the case, they will also go on this map. And the map is literally a Google map with push pins in it. A director will be able to look at that map, find, a location where the BCPO course is being offered, and get some general kind of at a glance information, a contact name, a contact number. I've tried to include things like, is a vaccination required to attend? Just different considerations, but ultimately some of those conversations you'll need to have with your local academy directors. It is, thank you, David, it is interactive, it is pretty user-friendly, and it will be sent out to you. I just want to make sure that I have as much information on there first before I send it out. But the idea here is we're going to obviously get as much time as we possibly can beyond the January 1, 2022 date. In the interim, we are obviously encouraging you to take advantage of any opportunity to have new officers trained in both the BCPO and in fundamentals, like my friend Danielle Jackson, who just reported out for Westchester. They're already ready to do that. They've gotten themselves to the point where they're ready to do that, and that's fantastic. So we obviously want folks to become, involved in this training situation, our local academies, and trying to get the BCPO course up and running. But for those who aren't running academies, it's important for you to recognize where you're going to be able to get this training, what it's going to involve, and ultimately, one thing I will say, and Bob, I'm surprised you didn't say this, but once you finish the BCPO course, as relevant as it is to your peace officer status, you really still don't have the training on how to be a probation officer. And that's really what our fundamentals curriculum is meant to do. That's why we've been kind of honing that curriculum all these years to make it as relevant as we can to our practice. So although the length of time for required training is going to go from essentially what was 4 weeks to probably closer to 9 weeks, at the end of that 9 weeks, we have a very well-trained, very well-rounded and prepared probation officer moving forward in our profession. And so that's kind of the way that we've chosen to kind of look at this, right? After we got over the shock of what's happening, we really took a step back and said, you know, this really isn't, it's not a bad thing at the end of the day. And the fact that OPS is willing to at least hear the idea of having a work group, if you will, to be able to start to make the content of the Bcpo a little more palatable for probation and other peace officers is a good thing. So, you know, I don't know whether or not we're going to get to that January 1, 2023 date. So that's why we're trying to really get prepared if the MPTC says, yeah, you know, I appreciate all your efforts, but you're going to have to come into compliance sooner than that. We don't want to leave anyone not prepared to do that.
Yeah,
So,
I think,
Bob, go ahead.
yeah, I perhaps didn't emphasize it, but I did say that I think that, you know, you can finish the basic course for peace officers and you won't know much about probation. And so we gave that some thought. And earlier in the week, Patty and David Lewis and I were talking and saying, so how should this occur? And we think the way it should occur is a couple of things. One is that the Bcpo should be taken first as almost like the predicate to the fundamentals. Get that under the belt of a probation officer, get that done, and then engage that person in the fundamentals for a couple of reasons. One is you're covered under the law because now they're a certified peace officer in New York State. And that's where your liability as a department lies. When the fundamentals qualified for the basic course for peace officers, we kept telling you, don't let them do tasks that really are peace officer related tasks, because the truth is, you know, you're liable. You go out and do a search and you're not a certified peace officer in New York State, there may be some liability there. You're covered if you complete the basic course for peace officers. So for certification as a peace officer, most important, take the basic course for peace officer and complete that first. So we want you to, you know, to do that first. Obviously for those departments that are, you know, providing the entire training, I'd recommend the same thing. The other thing is the last training I want to be on the minds and hearts and in the hearts of individuals that we hire in the departments is probation practice. You know, I want them to hear about the case planning, the criminogenic needs, the RNR framework, the value of cognitive behavioral interventions, case planning. You know, I want them to learn the implicit bias, our own approach to procedural justice. And let me say that perhaps now's a good time to jump in on this. Patty and I are very interested in developing our own principled probation officer training. We'll call it something else because we think probation officers certainly have a lot of principles. But the idea is the approach of probation and procedural justice is a little different from the police officer. I'm not saying that it's a bad course. It's a great course to take, but we want to develop something specific to probation officers because our relationship with individuals on supervision is a little different. First of all, probation comes to know and establish a long-lasting relationship with individuals over 3 years, 5 years, 6 years, and 10 years with individuals convicted of sex crimes. It is not just an arrest. Not that an arrest isn't important, but it's not an arrest and our responsibility is over. The truth is that's when our responsibility begins. So we establish, you know, relationships, client engagement. We establish relationships of mutual trust and understanding so that individual comes to trust us and is willing to examine their own thinking, beginning, you know, creating some dissonance that their own behavior has not resulted in good outcomes. So we think it's really important to have a probation branded procedural justice, something Patty and I are vitally interested in, and David as well. So first, in terms of order, basic course for peace officers, and then fundamentals. The other thing is that I know a lot of probation departments, you know, Commissioner Posey said at the Probation Commission, Bob, the truth is a lot of our officers are taking some defensive tactics now. They're taking the aerosol sprays. They're taking the active shooter training. So these are things that probation officers have independently sought to complete the 21 hours. And that's true. But what I suggest going forward is that in fact, you don't take those separately, you take it as part of one overall basic course for peace officers, because it will be the responsibility of the instructor in that BCPO to certify to DCJS that that person has completed all the requirements in the course. You can't expect that instructor to say, well, they completed 118 hours, but they took the aerosol spray here and they took the active trainer, and I got a lot of certificates I'm looking at. That's not the way it works. So you really need to take it as part of the BCPO. Now, in a site like Westchester, where they're doing their own BCPO, I think they have more flexibility to accomplish that. If there's an active shooter training and Daniela says, you know what? This will constitute the course on Tuesday, go take the active shooter, that's fine. It is part of the basic course for peace officers. So those are some of my thoughts. Anything else on that, Patty, that I missed?
No, I mean, it's an important point, right? And this came up before when we started doing the use of force training within FPP, and then departments were sending their officers to do firearms training, and they were repeating the use of force. Right. And this is kind of the point. If there are components of the BCPO training that include other trainings that you're doing separately, you're probably going to end up having to repeat them, because as the way that OPS will certify a roster on any given curriculum is it's the whole course. You know, you can't have a person come in and say, oh, I've already done DT elsewhere, I'm going to skip that part of the course. It doesn't work that way. So be mindful, and that's why we will make this curriculum and a table of contents available so that you can see exactly what's in it. It also may help once we do get permission to move forward with the work group. We'll probably be reaching out to the field and asking for some of you to help us to develop some of those probation officer specific content so we can take that back. So having your eyes on this will be helpful for everyone. So that's kind of the last point I want to make about that. And I know that we're already at 2 o'clock. I don't want to leave anyone in the dark here about what is going on with BCPO, but I think we've covered it in pretty good detail. So if everyone is good, I just want to move a little bit further down to the new face of fundamentals. And again, if you have comments and questions, you can certainly feel free to interrupt me or put them in chat. But the new phase.
Can I just add one thing?
Yes, please do.
Daniela, for anyone else that's thinking about hosting their own, I would just make the distinction that our BCPO would only be open for probation officers. I wouldn't want to do, and I don't think the commissioner would want to do a mixed room. So I just want to share that.
Yeah, good point, Daniela. And we wouldn't expect that. I know that came from a couple other sites. So let me make that point then. Thank you. When we're asking the local academy directors, are you planning to do a BCPO? We do not expect that you would open that up beyond peace officers. In fact, I don't necessarily expect you to open it up beyond your own county, but you all have been very gracious about doing that with fundamentals. It has always been your choice, and it will continue to be your choice if you choose to let others in. We certainly hope that you're able to, because it will help everyone. But there is no expectation, certainly beyond probation officers, for you to do that. So thank you for making that distinction. Now, just differently from that, the zone commanders. So when I'm talking about zone commanders, across the state, there's an entire network of zone academies that have always been established for police officers. They're available on the DCJS website. You can see them all and see all the contact information. That was the logical place that Bob and I went to try and establish the network for peace officer training. They're already doing the police officer training, so it made sense for us, and that's why we kind of started there. We're very pleased to know that most of our local academies who are doing fundamentals are also looking to do it. But thank you, Daniela, for making that point. So that really kind of goes for all of you. Did anyone else have a question about that from any of the other academies before I move to the second bullet?
Yes, I'm sorry, Patty. I just had one question. This is Kimberly from New York City.
Yep.
And the question was in regards to the curriculums, because say, for instance, prior to 2005, oftentimes many of the things that are in the Bcpo, we were readily following the MPTC based on that. So for instance, constitutional law and some of the other things that are currently that we're revisiting was there. The question is, as far as the curriculum content, because in many circumstances, it was developed within that particular academy. Like for instance, I mean, and maybe I'm dating it somewhat, I remember times that I sat down with the legal team in regards to some of the more legal courses that were being offered. So is there going to be a universal for the point of uniformity and what each officer would be receiving similar to fundamentals, or is this going to be left on the hands of that particular academy to develop something that would be comparable and that OPS or MPTC would then just approve?
So I think what you're asking is the BCPO standardized for all peace officers?
Yes.
And yes, it is. So there is some wiggle room. There's always been, you have to meet the minimum standard, right? So that's what the MPTC sets. In this case with the BCPO, it's the 162 hours, that table of contents I just shared. If you decide, if an employer decides that they want to do additional hours beyond the minimum standard, you've always been free to do that. You continue to be free to do that. So for example, Kim, you guys have done somewhere around 8 weeks in your Fundamentals Academy for a very long time. We were doing 3 and now 4 weeks. The minimum was, what the MPTC certified, which was the 4-week academy. What you did beyond that, what Westchester does beyond that, what other sites do beyond that is completely up to you as your employer requires. So that will maintain itself, but everyone has to follow the BCPO curriculum and standards as they are written at a minimum.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, because that was my concern in regards to, because we've done the extra. So a lot of the BCPOs we already have, fortunately, in place, so would be ready to run. But I was concerned about certain things in regards to what the actual curriculum looked like, and is that the universal standard? And I think that's what you posted a while back, like what each one would look like. So I'm talking about the actual instruction curriculum.
Right, that's in the Google Drive. That's the link that I shared out to all of the academies.
Perfect.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yep,
Thank
the BCPO course is there. You're welcome. And so, the fundamentals curriculum, because we know that has always been kind of the, I don't want to say the replacement to, but the exception that was made, for the fundamentals curriculum to serve as the training requirement for peace officers. We're still going to require that after the BCPO is completed, officers complete the fundamentals curriculum. But now we have an opportunity to kind of take that and adjust it, if you will, add things, maybe find ways to streamline other parts of it. And certainly we're going to remove the peace officer component of it because it makes no sense to duplicate that. So that's what I mean by the new face of FPP. It will no longer be under the authority, if you will, of the MPTC. We are not beholden to the MPTC for what's in that fundamentals curriculum. Now, we obviously just spent a great deal of time revising this with Orbis partners. So, you know, what does change is not going to be significant outside of removing that first week, which is the peace officer week. The changes will be pretty minimal. You know, if anything, we may look to streamline a couple of places, but make some maybe new topic areas where there haven't been, you know, those topics before. So there's some opportunity here to really kind of create a niche that maybe wasn't there for fundamentals. So that is also going on in the background. Until this, you know, Bcpo date becomes effective, we're going to leave it alone. We're going to train on it. The class that we do in April, the classes that the other academies have announced will be using that same curriculum that we always have. But as we kind of progress through this year and prepare for kind of our new training world, there will be a new face of fundamentals. And I hope that many of you will be part of, you know, the input through this committee and through other outreaches on what that will ultimately look like. But it will still remain part of the regulation. And then the last thing I want to mention under the training bullet here is I had talked last time about an Academy Directors Forum. Essentially what we're looking to do is, once we're all able to kind of meet again in person, we're looking at having an annual forum where we bring together all the local academy sites, and certainly others would be welcome to this, but the idea is that we have a place to collaborate. We have a lot of information, you know, that we kind of pass back and forth, and there's no real formal structure for us to talk. I mean, this quarterly meeting is a place for us to meet. We all individually will email each other, and we've connected one another, but I'm looking to do something a little bit more formal to really get folks together and just have a space for us all to talk about the training needs, what's working, what's not working, bounce some ideas off each other, and really get a chance to network. So that is coming hopefully in 2022, if we get a chance to do it amongst all these other pressing training issues, right? So any questions before we move on? I know the rest of OPCA staff have been waiting in the wings here to do their reports, but I want to make sure folks are clear on what's happening with the training requirements.
So Patty, I just want to add, to bring some closure to this, that yeah, we're going to ensure standardization in the Bcpo. Our regulation does require both the peace officer and the fundamentals completion. So certainly that's what we're going to do. And then lastly, look for a state director's memorandum on guidance. Once Patty and I attend the MPDC, training has already begun working on guidance for departments. In that will be, you know, where do you find the Google Maps and all the locations, and you know, guidance on taking the Bcpo first and trying to, and the dates, the effective dates, et cetera. So, you know, all that'll be included in written guidance, and of course, we'll continue to work with the training committee. So that's my last comment on the subject. And I do want to say that I very much appreciate your attention over this last hour.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm addressing a chat message here. I think I'm understanding your question correct, William, but essentially, so January 1, 2022 is when the law officially went into effect for the Bcpo for all peace officers. However, we have been and continue to be operating under an exemption, if you will. For right now, we're waiting until the March 9 date where we present to the MPTC and we request that exemption continue through until January 1, 2023. In the interim, what Bob had been saying earlier is that it would definitely be a good idea if departments are able to have their officers attend the Bcpo course and fundamentals, preferably in that order, prior to the effective date, right? So if they say, yes, you have until January 1, 2023, we're just saying because the Bcpo course isn't offered with great frequency, nor is it offered the frequency consistent across the state, and there may be fiscal considerations, we're looking for you to just take it upon yourselves if you have the opportunity and the ability to send your officers to the BCPO prior to that effective date. No, it's not required, but we do think that it would be helpful. And certainly if we're able to go to the MPTC and, present that as an argument for why we need some additional time. We've got all these considerations, but we're making strides toward this. So we want that to be recognized. That's what Bob, I think, was trying to drive at, was it will just really assist in that argument with the BCPO that we want this additional time. And I hope, William, that answered your question. Okay, so let me move to item number 6. And, obviously, if you have more questions, you can certainly follow up with me either after the meeting or at another time. But Gary or a member of the Adult Operations, would you like to do your report out?
I will start, and I'll actually invite a couple of staff members to unmute themselves and discuss their topics. So first, Michelle Melendez will discuss a couple impaired driving related opportunities that are forthcoming. One of them is a training event. The other is basically an orientation to an initiative that we have going on. So Michelle, if you want to unmute yourself and discuss those, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Patty. And good afternoon, everyone. I won't take too much of your time because I know we covered a lot of important information, but like Bob said, the decision points driving under the influence facilitator training was created for us to be able to help individuals convicted of a DWI crime or any other related crime examine their way of thinking and hopefully changing their behaviors when it comes to impaired driving. Right now, the deadline for the March training was on Friday. We received a lot of applications, and I want to thank everyone that's on the line that I've already spoken to for submitting your requests. Tomorrow we'll have a meeting to review the information and see who we can select to implement the program. Briefly, right now we have trained 23 facilitators who have, within 9 departments who have already implemented the program, and they're reporting that everything is going great, and the individuals that are participating are very grateful for the extra information and attention and helping them get their lives together. Our hope is that, and I only mentioned the deadline for the March training was Friday, but I don't want that to limit anyone from sending me an email expressing their interest, because we are having another training scheduled for June, the beginning of June, I believe it is. So if anyone is interested or you speak to anyone regarding the decision points driving under the influence program, I'll be more than happy to share additional information and take their information just to keep track of the departments that are interested in implementing. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Patty. That's all I have.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. And Michelle, the other item, which I'll mention here, if people see that on the agenda, this is a DMV A4 restriction removal. Again, this is not a statewide training, but really an orientation for a specific department. So some people have received that, but again, you see what that reflects there. So we'll invite people's specific participation in that, and we'll share information statewide as that advances as well. And next, I'd like to invite Danielle Brandis to speak about the Probation Officer Peer Support Initiative. Danielle, you may be muted.
Sorry, fast, Bob. Good afternoon, everyone. Just briefly, I wanted to discuss the peer support team training entering phase 2. We're going to be hosting the International Critical Incident Stress Foundation Assisting Individuals in Crisis course This is going to be in person on March through the 2nd at the Division of Homeland Security's training facility. So this is the first course for probation professionals who are interested in becoming trained peer support specialists within their counties. And we have 15 individuals that will be representing 4 different counties. So we are looking forward to this training in March. And again, if anybody has any questions regarding implementing a peer support program in their county, please feel free to contact me. Thank you.
Thank you both, Danielle and Michelle. The other thing I would add is for both the probation officer peer support and the decision points DUI facilitator program, we do host, periodic WebEx meetings for the people trained in those programs so they can kind of provide mutual support and discuss, their implementation. So we do offer those, again, as user support. So thank you all for your interest.
All right, thank you, Adult Operations. And let's move down to Juvenile Operations. I believe we have Teresa Skano-Hansen on the line.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just a couple quick updates from Juvenile Operations. I wanted to remind the anchor sites that we have been updating the fundamentals curriculum, Module 5, Justice System and the Law, Family Court. So just ensure that when you're rolling out your academies, you have the most up-to-date curriculum. We most recently amended Module 5 last spring of 2021, and that was in response to 2 pieces of legislation that affected PINs. As you may recall, last spring, the first piece came out of the cannabis law, where Penal Law 22105, the unlawful possession of marijuana violation level offense, was removed from the definition of PINs in the Family Court Act, Article 7. But also separately, Penal Law 24037, which is the charge of loitering for prostitution, was repealed last February. So those 2 elements of what defined a PINs have changed, and that changed your curriculum accordingly. That also impacted your learning objectives and I believe test questions as well. So just make sure you have the most up-to-date curriculum. And moving forward in 2022, actually there's another juvenile advisory that we sent out in email. I sent that out right before Christmas, raising directors' awareness, and I think I copied SDOs on that as well, to 2 additional bills that were signed and effective in October, which had to do with the prohibition of restraints on young people under the age of 21 appearing in family court, and a December effective date on a bill related to juvenile delinquencies, where youth that were JDs were taken into custody had to be brought before the most accessible magistrate for a detention decision. So we wanted to make sure that if you're a department that has any involvement in those practices, that you're reevaluating your policies with regard to those. Now, moving forward in 2022, about a week ago, I sent an email to directors about the definition of juvenile delinquency changing again at the end of this year. So effective December 29th of 2022, we'll have a new lower age of juvenile delinquency. Currently it's 7, but in December at the end of this year, it will become age 12 as our lowest age that a young person can be charged as a JD, with some exceptions. There's also some language in this bill that will become effective with regard to the criteria for fingerprinting. So again, this is going to impact your FPP curriculum. Module 5 will be impacted, your learning objectives, and probably some test questions will be changed come December. So just be mindful of us modifying curriculum to keep up with all of the legislative amendments that we're seeing in the juvenile justice realm. And that's it from Juvenile Ops, Patty, thanks.
Thank you, Teresa. And just so you know, if you are accessing the FPP curriculum from the Google Drive, the most current version of Mod 5 is there. That's the one that Teresa referenced from late 2021, and we would update it. I try to put an extension on there so you can see a date, so you have a sense of when it is, but I also try to take down the old one. So if you have been accessing it from there or we've been printing things for you, please know that you do have the most up-to-date at present. Okay, on to the interstate unit. Matt Charton, would you like to go?
Thank you, Patty. Sure. One quick announcement from Interstate. Back in September of 2021, the full commission approved 3 new rule amendments at the annual business meeting. And those, there are 3 rule amendments that will be effective come April 1st. And our unit will be providing training on those 3 new rule amendments. First one on March 9, second one on March 24th. March 9th one is in the morning, March 24th one is in the afternoon to give a little bit of change up for those people who are attending. Both trainings will be the same. You don't have to attend both. They're going to be the same training. And they will be, again, on the new rule changes effective April 1st of 2022 for the Interstate Commission for Adult Offender Supervision. Outside of that, we do continue to roll out our new or returning ICOTS user training, which is a requirement for those new users or those who let their account lapse before they can get back into ICOTS. And we do our quarterly topical training, our focal trainings, and we do have one coming up. I think it's February 23rd, and that's going to be on discretionary transfers, discretionary interstate transfers, both in and out. And as you're all aware, Kelly Palmetier and Penny Belcher of our unit do a fantastic job of pushing that information out. Certainly, if anybody has any questions, they can reach out to me or anybody in the interstate unit. Thank you, Patty.
Sure. Thank you, Matt. I believe we have Shayna Kern here representing the ATI unit. So Shayna, you can take it away.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. So yes, I'm just going to be talking for Nicole here about a few things that we have going on in ATI. First, we have the Rfp construction that we have currently going on. This would be for the spring for the ATI jail-based employment-focused services programs. So these contracts won't start until January 1st, 2023, but we're heavily working on getting that all together to go out this spring. Also, we have New York Compass training for ATIs that has just been scheduled for March 23rd and 24th. So if you have any ATI folks that would like to do this particular training, and there's one for probation as well, the week prior, I believe, but for ATI specific people, that would be the 23rd and the 24th with a response deadline of the 8th, March 8th. So we also have that just occurred right now for our Executive Law Article 13A, the service plans that you guys all get every year. That is just came out, and if you haven't received yours yet, because they were sent directly to county executives, the signatories that are in the GMS. So if you have not gotten those yet, you should be getting them any day. I believe they just started being sent out yesterday from our Office of Program Development and Funding, and they'll be sent out to you shortly with the return date of March 25th, I believe. Yes, March 25th. And if anyone needs an extension for any reason, you can reach out to Nicole or your program rep. And we also have the Pretrial Services Program Forum. So we're not really sure on a date. It's not fall, probably this spring, but we are trying to develop something because we know that pretrial services, stuff with bail reform and everything has been such a big, question surrounding things with pretrial services. So we're trying to get together a forum regarding that, just as we had done with our community service programs, our defender-based advocacy programs. And we think that this will be a really great program to put together for those that are involved in pretrial services. And lastly, it's not on here, but we probably looking towards interactive journaling too. We just had some interactive journaling done, but to have some probably done after FPP, and the training unit gets done with the spring FPP. So I'm thinking probably, right, Patty, and I think David said too, that we will look towards doing more of those in the springtime for any staff members that might need interactive journaling. And that's it.
Great. Yes, you're right about that, Shayna. We are going to put a full training plan with some courses that we'll be offering soon, and then what we look forward to doing in 2023 in the next issue of eFocus. So look for that. But before I forget here, let me move to the Vocational Educational Employment and Reentry Unit, the VER unit, and Frank Cangiano is unfortunately not feeling well today, so I believe we have Melinda Vick representing the VER unit. Go ahead, Melinda.
Thank you, Patty. Yes, today I'll be playing the part of Frank Cangiano, so thank you. Just a quick reminder to everybody that here at the VER unit, we have the Vocational Educational Resource Map, which is available on the DCJS website. If you go under reentry, you can go to the map. And this resource map contains a ton of locations and information on almost 500 different programs that provide vocational and educational services to all of our justice-involved youth. So it's things like Access VR, Department of Labor, Job Corps. It can tell you pretty much where any of those services are located, what they do, how they do it, and how you get a hold of them. So it's a great resource to have at your fingertips. And then secondly, this bullet's changed up just a little bit. We are actually going to be hosting a Probation Employment Liaison, or PEL for short, webinar, which we are delivering on March 3rd at 10 a.m. Frank Cangiano, CCR2, has received emails from PELs at many of the probation departments regarding identified employment initiatives, which has been very helpful. And also from the probation directors and PELs, they're going to be receiving an invitation hopefully this week. So be on the lookout for that invitation. And other than that, that is all the VER unit has to report right now. So thank you.
Thank you, Melinda. Yes, I have Google Map Envy over the VER unit's resource map. It was where I got the idea to do the Bcpo map, which is significantly less sophisticated than what they have, but we'll get there. So that concludes the report outs for each of the offices. I'm going to add one thing to the other business, and then I'll open it up to the rest of you for other business. And that is, we've made a significant effort over the last few years to do a lot of train the trainer courses and programs, and there's a very good reason for it. We're trying to put as many resources and boots on the ground, if you will, out there, because frankly, we can't, as an army of three here in the training unit, we can't possibly deliver training to everyone and meet everyone's needs. And so that decision was made a few years ago. Why am I bringing that up? Because what we're finding is we have folks who are registering for some of our trainings. Interactive journaling is one of them, and it triggered my memory when it was just mentioned. But we have folks who are signing up for trainings, that we advertise, which is wonderful, with one exception. We're having now to screen out some people who, we're turning them away because we know you have a trainer in your own county. And so I'm just asking for some assistance for those of you on the line. If you have applicants, if you're a director, SDO, and you have applicants, your officers are coming to you and saying, I'd like to take the interactive journaling training, please, if you have a trainer on site and you're able to coordinate that, which is what we're hoping you would do in implementing the program, try to screen those out a little bit for us, if you would. It is a big task. We often get inundated with applications, and we try to do our best to accommodate everyone. But especially with the virtual realm, we have much more limited seating capability, and so it would just make things a lot easier. So if you're mindful of the folks who are applying and the fact that you have in-house trainers, it would really be a big help for us. A couple of folks have asked me for access to the Google Drive, which is fine, but what I'm going to do, there's a lot of information in there that's completely irrelevant if you're not instructing in an academy. So I will make a separate folder within the Google Drive that will contain the Bcpo information, the student manuals. I'm not going to share out the instructor manuals unless you're going to be doing your academy, but I will share out the table of contents, all the student information, and the same with the fundamentals, so that you can get that information available. And I'll share that link out to directors and SDOs as soon as I get that up and running. Okay, so I'm going to stop talking and, ask if anyone has any other business that you'd like to raise or any questions on anything that we've presented. Okay. It's pretty quiet, so I'm going to guess there's no other business. So I just want to thank you all. We've given you a lot of information. I hope that we've clarified, especially around the Bcpo, I hope we've clarified some of the concerns and questions. We're always available if you want to follow up with us, if you have additional things. If not, thank you all for hanging on for the hour and a half. And our next meeting will be May 17th. Again, any questions, comments, you can forward them directly to me. Otherwise, have a wonderful evening and thank you.